𝐻𝐿 was a man sculpted by ambition and polished by wealth. He owned a small but successful import business dealing in exotic teas and spices from far-flung corners of the globe. Arthur, in his late 40s, believed in one gospel, one truth: money was everything. It was the key to power, respect, and a life free from want. He treated his employees with cold efficiency, seeing them as cogs in his well-oiled money-making machine. Charity was a weakness, compassion a foolish sentiment. Time is money, he'd often bark, his voice raspy and impatient. And I don't have any to waste on those who can't help themselves. He lived alone in a sterile, modern apartment overlooking the city. The expensive furniture felt cold beneath his touch. He ate meticulously prepared meals alone, the silence punctuated only by the clinking of his silverware. He valued solitude, believing that relationships were just liabilities waiting to happen, distractions from the pursuit of profit. One particularly blustery autumn evening, Arthur was driving back from a late meeting. A new shipment of rare saffron was about to arrive, and the potential profits were dancing in his head like sugar plums. He was so preoccupied that he didn't notice the darkening sky or the rising wind until it was too late. Suddenly, a rogue gust of wind slammed into his car, sending it careening off the road. The tires screeched in protest as the vehicle spun, finally crashing into a thicket of trees. The world went black. When Arthur regained consciousness, a sharp pain lanced through his left leg. He was trapped. The car was a mangled mess of metal and glass. He tried to move, but agony shot up his leg, making him cry out. The car's horn blared intermittently, a desperate, lonely sound in the growing darkness. Panic seized him. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers clumsy with fear. Dead, no signal. He was completely alone, injured, and at the mercy of the elements. The wind howled like a banshee, and rain began to lash against the shattered windows. Arthur, the man who believed in the power of money, suddenly realized its utter uselessness in this moment. He was utterly helpless. Hours crawled by, the pain in his leg intensified, and the cold seeped into his bones. Hypothermia was setting in. He closed his eyes, resigning himself to the inevitable. He thought of his empty apartment, his overflowing bank accounts, and the absolute solitude of his life, and a wave of despair washed over him. What good was all of it now? Then, through the howling wind, he heard a sound. A small, hesitant voice. "Hello." Arthur opened his eyes, blinking against the rain. A figure was huddled near the wreckage, small and thin against the backdrop of the storm. It was a girl, no older than 10, her face smudged with dirt, her clothes ragged and soaked. He recognized her instantly. She was one of the homeless children who often huddled in the alleyways near his office, begging for spare change. Arthur usually ignored them, seeing them as a blight on the city, a symbol of failure. "Help," he croaked, his voice barely audible. "Please, help me." The girl hesitated only for a moment. "I'll try," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. Her name was Lily, she told him later. She lived in a makeshift shelter nearby with a group of other orphaned children. She had been scavenging for firewood when she heard the crash. Lily, despite her own vulnerability, possessed a courage that Arthur had never known. She tried to open the car door, but it was jammed. She ran back to her shelter and returned with a rusty crowbar she had found. Together, they worked to pry open the door. Arthur, humbled and in excruciating pain, could only offer encouragement. He watched, amazed by the girl's strength and resilience. After what seemed like an eternity, the door creaked open. Lily helped him crawl out of the wreckage. It was a struggle, and Arthur groaned with every movement. She supported him, her small frame surprisingly strong. I can't walk," Arthur gasped. "I know a place," Lily said. "It's not far, it's dry." She led him, step by agonizing step, through the storm-swept woods. The small shack, nestled in a hollow, was barely more than a lean-to, but it offered shelter from the wind and rain. Inside, a small fire crackled in a makeshift hearth. Several other children huddled around it, their eyes wide with apprehension. Lily explained what had happened, and they looked at Arthur, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Lily and the other children did everything they could to make him comfortable. They shared their meager food, a piece of stale bread and some berries. They covered him with their threadbare blankets. Arthur, who had never known such simple kindness, was overwhelmed. He looked at these children, who had nothing, yet were willing to share everything they had. He felt a profound sense of shame. As the night wore on, Lily stayed by his side. Tending to his needs, she cleaned his wounds with rainwater and tore strips from her own clothing to bandage his leg. She spoke to him in a quiet, soothing voice, telling him stories of hope and resilience. He learned about their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. He learned about the importance of community, the power of compassion, and the true meaning of wealth. It wasn't measured in dollars and cents, but in kindness and human connection. The next morning, the storm had passed. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light on the forest. Lily went to the main road and flagged down a passing truck. The driver, a kindly farmer, used his radio to call for help. An ambulance arrived and Arthur was taken to the hospital as he was being lifted onto the stretcher. He turned to Lily. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life." Lily smiled, a shy, hesitant smile. "You're welcome," she said. I want to repay you," Arthur said. "Name anything, anything at all." Lily shook her head. "I don't want anything," she said. "Just be kind. Remember us." Arthur was speechless. He was used to people clamoring for his money, trying to take advantage of him. But Lily wanted nothing. Her act of kindness was pure, unadulterated, and utterly transformative. Back in his sterile apartment, surrounded by his expensive possessions, Arthur felt a profound sense of emptiness. He realized that he had been living a lie. He had chased after money, believing it would bring him happiness, but it had only brought him isolation and despair. He sold his business. He liquidated his assets. He used the money to establish a foundation to help homeless children. He funded shelters, provided food and clothing, and offered educational opportunities. He visited Lily and her friends often. He listened to their stories, learned from their experiences, and became a part of their community. He found purpose in helping others, in making a difference in the world. Arthur never forgot the night he crashed his car. He never forgot Lily's kindness. He'd been given a second chance, a chance to redefine his life, to discover the true meaning of wealth. He finally understood that money was not everything. It was merely a tool, and it was how you used that tool that truly mattered. He finally understood that the greatest wealth was not in his bank account, but in his heart and in the connections he made with others. The man who once believed that money was everything had finally learned that the truest riches were compassion, empathy, and a subtle act of human kindness. He finally understood they had been blind, and Lily, that little homeless girl, would help him to see. He still remembered the words that Lily told him. Just be kind. Remember us. That you knew that was the 𝐊𝐢𝐻𝐿 success with.